Well, hello there everyone. One of the games I've had my eye on for a good while was Rubinite, a boss-focused action game with some gorgeous-looking pixel art. I remember playing the demo and enjoying it a lot, but also wanting to see more of what the story had to offer. Now, I was expecting it'd be a 3 to 4 hour game with some cool bosses and maybe a solid story like Nano Apostle. Turns out it was actually a 12-hour game with a good story, some cool bosses, and a fair number of little puzzles and exploration portions thrown in at this game's hub world as breaks between the action. Overall, I'm giving this one a pretty easy recommendation, and now I'm going to be ranking the bosses. However, I'll be ranking them by difficulty first this time around, as I'm still not 100% sure on my positionings quality-wise yet. I'm still getting some of that figured out. Though I think the difficulty is pretty definitively locked in for me, so without further ado, let's dive on in, shall we? Number 15, The Bound Man. Honestly, I'm not sure if this guy counts as a boss or not. He doesn't have a boss health bar, but he's listed as a boss in the wiki and is a unique fight here with his own moveset, so I guess it can be included. He's your tutorial fight of the game, meant to get you used to the most basic controls. I'm genuinely not even sure if you can actually die to this guy. But as the tutorial to end all tutorials, I think he does a fine enough job, all things considered, and he's an interesting enough character being an immortal that's trying to find a way to die. He's the easiest fight by far, but it's inoffensive and I don't have anything bad to say about it. Number 14, Ghost Knight Grant. Well, technically, Grant is actually just the knight's body that the ghost possesses. Now, seeing the first 3-phase boss fight in the game listed as the easiest proper boss is sure to be a head scratcher, but in my defense, he's also the only boss in this game I have beaten no death on both normal mode and on true mode, so clearly he's not that hard, because this game absolutely kicked my ass at points. And this fight is oddly late in the game too, like, we've made it to the capital, unsealed the gate, and we even killed Faye, so this guy almost feels like a random filler boss. Though, I guess he does work, because after you strike down Grant, the true boss reveals itself to be a ghost that possesses the corpses strewn about the arena, and you're in the battleground where a bunch of knights and a dragon fought to the death, and killed each other in the process. On top of that, it's the first boss with 3 phases, which is something even the final boss doesn't have. Phase 1 is simply a battle with Grant, but then the ghost will attack you and begin possessing the corpses strewn about the arena in Phase 2. The thing is, while this definitely gives the boss a large moveset, each form only has 2 attacks and he's not able to quickly change the forms on a dime, so ultimately the fight ends up being pretty easy because you're never dealing with more than 2 possible attacks at a time. Even in Phase 3, when he possesses the dragon head, all he does is add some flames around the arena and some fire AoEs from the knight's attacks. I feel like this boss should be harder, but across my 5 fights with him, he's still the only boss I've yet to die against, and since you have in-game builds, he's not able to put up much of a fight once you realize that fire is indeed hot, don't touch it. Number 13, Guardian Fae. It's probably because I'm used to the demo, but honestly, I locked in pretty hard for this first fight with Faye because while I had a careless death on my first run, I absolutely shredded her on attempt number 2. Though, to be fair, she does deserve some recognition for having access to a grab attack before you can possibly have the ability to counter grabs, but the damage is low enough that it's a bit negligible. Even compared to the boss before her, I have a level of confidence against this boss that I don't carry for other boss battles in this game, and her stun time when you bring her down to Phase 2 is generous to say the least. Honestly, if it wasn't for her grab, she'd be easier than Grant. Though, I could see this fight being a lot tougher if you hadn't played the demo so much, but I played it a ton, so once I shook the rust off against the previous boss, I was pretty locked in for this fight and had an easy time overall. Number 12, The Plague Bearer. Surprisingly, I don't absolutely despise this boss fight, especially after the horrendous battle that came before it. The Plague Bearer is one of the fastest bosses in the game and is almost a bullet hell boss compared to the other fights, so why is the battle one of the easiest in my opinion? Well, because it's honestly a pretty relaxed battle and is here to teach you that basic attacks with your knife are in fact very good and you should rely on them just as much as any other tool in the game. Don't neglect it and just go for focus attacks. That's not going to work out too well. And while this is the first boss with a second health bar, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, there's not really any new attacks between phases, instead just increasing the attack frequency from the other segments. But at the same time, you can control the pacing because you can decide if you want to take out the smaller, more annoying segment in Phase 2 to deal with an easier final sprint, or take out the bigger segment first for a potentially quicker but likely much deadlier pinch mode. I will concede, however, that this fight is far worse without the charm that slows status effect buildup and allows you to see through smoke. That pendant makes a huge difference, and it's also a charm you should equip at absolutely all times because it's too damn versatile to not use, and it only costs a single slot. I feel like that's the one charm that actually is balanced in your favor. Number 11, Shadow Ruby. This is another fight that I've seen debated on whether or not it counts as a boss. I'm choosing to say yes because I'm always going to err on the side of yes in these videos. This is also the shortest fight in the game, whether you win or lose, because she's able to kill you in one shot, but you can take her down almost as quickly. I've heard her stats scale to yours, but I came in maxed out so I can't verify that too much, but this fight won't even last a full minute. Heck, it probably won't even last 30 seconds. Again though, she kills you in a single hit. With Mirror's protection, you're allowed to take one hit from her, but that's all. This is also the only fight in the game where your revival charm doesn't work, so don't bother equipping it, it's just wasting slots. If it did, this would be the easiest boss in the game because you could bum rush her and win, but since you're only allowed to take a single hit at absolute most, it does hold some challenge despite it being a brief encounter. Think of it like a shootout, and not much else. Number 10, The Beast. The first completely unambiguous boss fight of the game, the Beast is bloody and brutal and kind of awesome. But we're not talking about the quality today, we're talking about the difficulty. Okay, maybe a little bit about the quality, because the animation work on this guy's attacks are incredible. But they're also important, because basically everything he does has a follow-up, but there's an intentional delay to each attack to the point that once you've gotten used to the controls, you can quickly dodge out of the way, even if he's sending out another attack, because this game controls like a dream with how responsive everything is. Being the first proper boss of the game, the fight is quite basic, but in a way that works well. Compared to the other bosses, he feels like he's moving in slow motion, but when the fight is super early in the game, you have no upgrades or charm customization, only about a third of your moveset, and a single unupgraded healing potion, it's going to be a decently tough challenge for a new playthrough. So I do have to give him some points above the bottom of the list. Number 9, the Corvid Priest. I mean the Dual Cultists. Okay, so this one's a bit weird. I feel like the gank boss was supposed to be some sort of phase 2 to the fight, but almost immediately after the fight starts, this boss goes from a battle with a comedically tall crow man to a duo boss fight, and I don't fully get why? I guess they found the crow on its own to be too basic to even be a first phase, but I don't know why it's like almost immediately, okay, just go into this. Why not have it be a dual gank fight from the start? I don't know, whatever. Anyways, this boss is a 2v1, so it's going to have some additional difficulty to factor in, but unlike many bad ganks, this one is actually well designed, with two bosses always on screen together, the movements that complement one another, as well as synchronizing their attacks with each other. A lot of the challenge is less about dealing with two targets and more about remembering where the feathers are stuck in the walls, as they will remain potential hazards in play to contend with, on top of this boss being your tutorial on countering grab attacks, as this boss loves to try to eat you. While the fight can last a bit long bosses aren't the automatic hardest fights in the game because you can quickly get the second healing potion, as well as the Bloodsucker charm allowing you to refill your potions by attacking enemies, and with there being two viable targets that share a single health bar, they're far more susceptible to critical strikes than the average boss would be, which makes the fight not nearly as long as you'd think. Plus, while this can be your first Castle Guardian you fight, he was my third, so I was more than properly geared for this battle. Not a bad boss by any means though, just a little bit odd that they give it its own health bar and name for a first phase that doesn't exist, and then it immediately changes. Just a weird choice. Number 8, the Hall of Mirrors. Sorry about that. Number 8, Alcina the Witch. The final boss in the middle of the pack is kind of surprising, but it's kind of like this. She's by no means an easy boss, but by the time you get to her, you've been prepared for anything and everything. So once you take the 30 seconds to learn the timing of her scythe slash, her first phase is basically a completely free cakewalk. Phase 2 is definitely tougher though, with the dark flame, but pretty much everything she does is basic 3-hit combos, which means once you've learned the rhythm, it's kind of free max powered strikes. She has some strong attacks, but after the other in-game bosses put up such a massive fight, and Grant was there as well I guess, this battle feels downright quaint in comparison, especially since she only has 2 phases while the previous 2 bosses were both 3-phasers. Though I suppose I will say, it is impressive how Ruby's going through all this stuff like getting stabbed and flung around like a ragdoll, and getting devoured and taking it like a champ, basically just needing to drink a Capri Sun and walk it off. Ruby's just a little kid, and unlike Anita from Mano Apostle, she doesn't have a nigh immortal exoskeleton protecting her, so I guess you gotta love that video game logic. Foreshadowing is a literary device. Number 7. The Devouring Tree. So about what I just said on Alcina's fight, with Ruby taking hits like a champ, well, after you beat the final boss, the game pulls a Nier Automata on you, and you unlock True Mode, aka the second half of the game. Your attacks can do a lot more damage to enemies, but there's no HUD elements to tell you their HP, no healing potions to shrug off damage, and Ruby's a young girl fighting monsters 10 times her size, if not more. She's going to die in a single hit 19 times out of 20. Now thankfully, this game doesn't have permadeath, but as you can imagine, True Mode is a good deal tougher, and it comes with some new bosses like the Quick and Deadly Shadow Ruby or the Devouring Tree that I spent most of the game wondering what happened to this thing because it was one of the most standout looking opponents in the original game trailer when that first got showed off. Well, it turns out it's an in-game boss designed for the one-hit kill mode. Okay, that's a bit disingenuous. Not too long into the mode, you get a charm called Mira's Protection, which allows you to take a single hit of lethal damage and survive, and if you max out your skill tree, you'll be able to finally slay the Bound Man and get his revival charm, allowing you to come back from the dead one time. This gives you 2 mulligans per attempt instead of having to play perfectly, and honestly, that's a lot more workable than you'd think. And I did say 19 times out of 20 because on rare occasions, Ruby just doesn't take lethal damage, so the safety nets aren't spent. I'm guessing that under the hood she has more than 1 HP, so these attacks aren't dealing actual fatal damage on occasion, but who knows. Anyways, the tree is a surprisingly straightforward fight once you learn how to survive his initial onslaught. Don't waste your time with max strikes, just opt for the level 1 strikes on the roots and level 3s on the eyeball. Otherwise, you know you're making progress when the boss gives you blood dust to signify phase 2, or when he starts firing off lasers and doing more big coordinated attacks. Now you can choose when he shoots out those little blood orbs at you to either hit them back and deflect them, or to, well, focus on the main eye and dodge through them to build up your strike gauge. It's up to you. It definitely seems intimidating, but outside of his laser, which is coordinated with the root stabs, you never deal with more than 1 attack at a time, making it a fair bit easier than you'd initially think once you get over the new boss fight. Of it all. Number 6, Martyred Angel. This boss was the last of the 4 Guardians that I faced, and whoo boy was it a challenge. The dual cultists were your introduction to countering grab attacks, so now the game will just be sprinkling them in throughout the fight, expecting you to adapt and stand your toes. Now in terms of melee attacks, it's more or less the same as the beast from the start of the game, but now with grab attacks thrown in. However, when we start taking into account his eggshell armor he can use for both offense and defense, as well as the lava that surrounds the arena at some points, it's a boss that's very simple on paper, but a lot tougher to beat than he'd initially seemed to be. And despite him being using regular orange fire, I would actually say it's a decent bit more dangerous than the evil purple fire basically everything else seems to use in the late game, so that's kind of funny there, because I remember actually taking burn damage against this thing. Number 5, the Puppet Master. The most important thing to remember is to keep an eye on the Queen's body, as this boss loves to set up an attack with his left hand, but he'll more than happily hold it there to keep attacking you with his puppet, and more than likely a majority of your deaths will come from that. The scariest attack the boss has though is his Fist Slam, as you don't even have a second to react to it and stop it, but you have to counter it with a knife throw, or you're going to take damage, and given that this boss is exclusive to True Mode, that damage means instant death. Now, I know it may seem crazy that the True Mode exclusive bosses aren't all at the top of the list, but the fact of the matter is that while yes, many of them did take me the better part of a dozen attempts, I wasn't stuck on any of these bosses for long. Phantom Ruby or Devouring Tree, especially, they only took me about 10 minutes, and the Puppet Master only took me about 15 to beat. Definitely difficult, but once you learn most of these fights, you kind of have them locked in, and they're thankfully not super bulky or tanky opponents to deal with. Number 4. Guardian Fae Round 2. Fae stops holding back for her rematch in the endgame, now packing 2 health bars, and her first phase is already a souped up version of her original fight's second phase, with the extra combos and blades thrown in, but at the same time, now with your complete moveset, you can counter anything and everything she does, so phase 1 of the fight, despite the extra stuff being thrown in, isn't that difficult all things considered, it's just you have to stay on your A game. Then we get to phase 2, where the challenge amps up a lot as she begins doing her jump attacks quite often, and while she has more generous telegraphs than most, it's still quite a deadly attack on top of all of her combos coming out faster than before, and also she's now going to slam her swords into the ground to spread out flowers that quickly ignite and turn the arena into area denial, while also dealing with all her other attacks. It's a tough time to be sure, but the game has still prepared you for this battle, so it's not really a matter of having to learn everything all over again, it's more a matter of not panicking and, well, locking in. Because the most important thing is to not panic when she attacks you while half the arena is currently in the process of exploding. That's what's going to make the difference here. As long as you don't panic though, you should be good to go. Number 3, Gravekeeper. This fucking boss. Oh my god, I hate this shovel-wielding plague doctor piece of shit with a passion. He's your introduction to jumping attacks, but his animations are so weird when he moves all over or around the place that I've had times his counters just don't work. On top of his clones loving to spew poison around the arena. That not only can poison you, surprise surprise, but it also obscures Ruby's vision, making her unable to charge up strike attacks, and this boss, it just doesn't have any natural rhythm to the attacks. They just sort of happen, or he'll spin around a lot, or whatever. Your only real safe times to attack him are when he gets stuck in a wall from his thrusts, pretty much, or he frames his attacks end, or after you, counter his jump, which, okay, fine, I guess, but I don't know. On top of that, the fight is where you have to use precision darts in order to counter his jump attacks, and given how early in the game this fight is, you could come here without that ability unlocked yet, and this is the only boss until basically the end game that even uses jump attacks either. Now, to be fair, you could have the same issue of not having Spin Slash available for the dual cultists to counter their grabs, but the difference is you can still dodge grab attacks. His jump attack is borderline impossible to dodge and requires precision darts, and it's just really just not annoying, or it's annoying here. It's not an issue later in the game because by the mid-game it's very cheap to purchase the skill, but when the fight is potentially your third boss, you can easily be stuck here up a creek, essentially having to bash your head against the boss and get to phase 2 over and over and die just so you can finally afford the precision dart skill, because you also don't get the ability to rematch bosses until after your first guardian is slain. And lastly, his attacks just don't feel right. It's a rhythm I never really entered any flow state or anything like that. I just sort of snuck in what little damage I could during the points he tired himself out, and spoilers for the quality ranking, but I think this is the worst boss in the game by a mile, and it's far tougher than anything else that isn't part of the end game. Number 2, Roy. Roy is another 3-phase boss fight. Kind of. But phase 1 is just a story phase, and it's also the only phase that can be skipped once it's completed. As for Phase 2 onwards, the fight is one of the fastest paced battles in the game, having all the same capabilities as you, barring a spin slash, but hey, he doesn't bother with grab attacks anyways, and instead substitutes them for smoke bombs. He's packing some of the highest damaging attacks in the game, and quite frankly, Alcina feels like light work in comparison to this boss. And his last phase, oh my god, there is very little downtime here. He doesn't get stunned like other bosses can be either, so it's never going to be easy. You're not going to be able to charge the focus gauge for strike attacks, you're only going to be able to get it charged up from perfect dodging, so you have to be on point in this fight. However, refreshingly, unlike the Gravekeeper, this is an awesome boss fight, but it's also a relentless one. I found it odd that Grant is fought after Faye in terms of like in-game boss pacing, but no, Roy belongs right here at the very end of the game's story. I think he earns it, and his music kicks ass too, but you're gonna have to save that segment for the quality ranking. Number 1, Blood Moon Alcina. The true final boss of the game is the toughest battle in the game, who'd have thunk? I want to say, just starting out, I actually don't hate this boss fight, but it is definitely one of the hardest bosses I've faced in years. A large part of that is due to this boss fight being the true mode, meaning a single hit will spell death, usually. Mirror's protection will allow you to endure one fatal blow, and the blessing of the bound man allows you to return from the dead one time, so you do get 2 mulligans, but that's also 6 charm slots being used right there, and that means you can't use in-game charms like Strikemeister or even the Rubinite itself. That being said, this is also the one fight where I consistently find Ruby gets hit by an attack on occasion, but doesn't actually take the fatal damage. I guess she shrugs it off with like 2 HP or something, I don't know. Anyways, Phase 1 is still fairly easy, but in Phase 2 with the dark fire circles affecting your positioning, it also means her originally kind of insignificant attacks like the dark orbs or her lance throws are now a lot more dangerous, and that fire is indeed hot and can burn you alive very quickly, even with status protection put on. It's not an easy fight, it is actually very tough. But the real challenge comes in her third phase when she now introduces bullet hell attacks as well as phantom scythe follow-ups that will catch you off guard the first few times and probably spell your death, because they're just an extra part of her combos now. Thankfully, the fire circle attack is gone in this final phase, which is a massive relief because that was what gave me so much trouble in Phase 2 where I'd always get clipped by something stupid. But where I used to dread her triple lance attack, I now pray for it because at least I know that attack is an easy strike charge. The battle only lasts about 3 or 4 minutes when executed correctly, which is quite short for a final boss fight. But when I was throwing myself at this boss for the better part of 2 days, I think that's pretty definitively the hardest boss in the game. And keep in mind, another aspect of True Mode is there's no UI, so you can't even see how much health the boss has, and that will significantly affect how you decide to make plays, because unless you've memorized the exact damage your attacks do, you won't know if she's a multiple full-powered strikes away from death, or just a single dart throw away from death, and that does affect your instincts and what risks you're willing to take. I like this boss battle, but it's far and away the toughest one I've faced this year, and it's also the reason why I decided to do a difficulty ranking first, because this is one of the 2 bosses I'm still kind of on the fence for where I'd put quality-wise, because I think there's a really awesome fight here, but I haven't really got it nailed down yet, and I want to have that more figured out before I make the final quality ranking. And that's all I've got for this video. Rubinite's an amazing game that's surprisingly very bulky, and it's only priced at $20, and I can't recommend it enough. I definitely think it's one you'll have a fun time with, especially if you like boss fights in your video games. I hope all of you enjoyed, and look forward to seeing the quality ranking of the bosses fairly soon. If you like the video and want to see more content of varying quality, consider liking, subscribing, and hyping the video. I'm getting ever closer to 10,000 subscribers, and my goal is to try to reach it before the year ends. Should be achievable, but I never know what's going to happen. That's all I've got for now, so until next time, take care everyone.